Hello and welcome to another episode of the Get Psyched Show. Today I'm joined by Miguel Mcintosh. I met Miguel working for a summer school last year, and his passion, energy and expertise meant we developed a really great friendship, so I was keen to get him on and share his experience. After 3 seasons, Miguel has just finished a role working as a sports scientist with Ayr United Football Club. We chat about his pathway into this role, finding a passion for sports science and his development through college and university. We also look through what a week in his shoes looks like, as well as the importance of developing relationships with academy players. Miguel is moving on to a new role outside of football, so we discussed why this was and the challenges that still exist in football today. I loved recording this episode and I hope you enjoy listening. If so, please feel free to leave a review and share it with a friend. Thank you.
I'm good, George. How are you doing? Nice to see you again, mate. So my name is Miguel Mcintosh. I'm 25 from Ayr and I work with Ayr United Football Academy as a sports scientist. Yeah, no, that's fine. So when I was younger, I had strong aspirations of being a footballer, and you know, you can run through the tales of how they goes. When I was in sixth year, I was lucky enough to be offered that opportunity out in Spain, and it was sort of like my kind of only serious opportunity that I've kind of had. And around 6 months into it, ended up with a bit of a knee injury. Was struggling to get the rehab I needed over there, so decided to come back over to Scotland as well, be a bit closer to my friends, etc. Got a phone call a little while into it. I'd been doing pretty well when I was over there, but they don't have any older age groups outside of under 18s, and they basically was like, look, we can't offer you anything, so unfortunately your time's over, which was hard to take. But I sort of started playing over here. I did little shifts down to like Stranraer or whatever to try go and trial, but I think I kind of sat in my head, I think I was going to be working my way out. So when I was playing junior football and I was studying sports science at university, I was actually thoroughly enjoying my time at I was actually college beforehand. I started through college at Ayr College, and I was really enjoying it, and I could see myself continuing it. So there happened to be an ad when I was when I was at UWS at university, my third year, to do a placement opportunity at United Football Club. So obviously it'd been local, it was like totally ideal for me, just up the road, easy to get to. Already kind of knew a few of the staff members just from kind of passing by, and came in originally just as a placement student, as anyone does, shadow over, you know, the head of performance, have a little look at what they're doing, take little parts of warm-ups. Then it became take little parts of training. Then once I kind of had the hang of that, I started taking parts of the kind of training, looking at adapting physical adaptations to it as well, seeing how I could put the both together. Just through, I think, my own enthusiasm, I was actually doing really well as well. I was loving being around football again, and I was enjoying it. Had a lot of good opportunities throughout there, so I wasn't just going with one age group. I was looking after all age groups, and I was lucky enough to actually be offered a paid opportunity there to be the kind of lead academy sports scientist. So I was in charge of all things sports science from under 11s to under 16s. And then as of this year, I started working with under 18s more primarily. So that kind of gave me a bit of a base to now kind of concentrate in one age group. So from everywhere from taking the warm up, concentrating, maybe taking the GPS metrics, controlling their gym programs, also kind of adapting anything within the week that needed to be done. And I also included still kind of looking over the under 11s to under 16s, but more myself and the head performance would overwatch it together. So yeah, that's me up to this point. I kind of just started with a sort of, I wouldn't say like somebody who spins the map, but now you're kind of looking down the courses that you can do at college and university, and I was like, so do you know what, sports science sounds a bit cool rather than, you know, sports coaching. Everybody was doing that. I've never heard of sports science. Just went out there and started to enjoy it. I think it helped as well. When I was younger, one of the big strong points I always had was being very physically capable. So I could always kind of understand from my own like kind of physical fitness, like what was going on, what helped me, what I needed to do. So yeah, it's worked out all right up to this point. And even throughout the time I've been working with United, I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of nice people and get some work within the first team as well.
Yeah, excellent. And you've sort of like answered my next question in a way, because it was going to be about why did you pick sports science? What was it about it that you sort of found interesting? And I guess you sort of, it was just like it seemed something interesting, and you had that sport background already.
It was, George, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't, even when I was at school, it was all about sports. So like I was that annoying kid that was good at all the sports because I couldn't be bad at it. I was just too competitive, right? And when I was in English class or whatever, like all I could think about was the school football game or whatever I had on sports wise. It was just the way I was plugged. I think I just love to use my body to get better. And I looked at other kind of avenues as well. I was quite good at, things like graphic designs and stuff in school, and I loved kind of coming up with stuff. So I was looking at architecture as well, but it was just a case of kind of like, I want to stay in sports. I was just scanning through and I was like, and it was like, do you know what? This just sounds a bit different. It also sounds a bit sort of technical. So when you're reading under it, it was like all about like anatomy and biology, and I was like, oh, this sounds like it's got a lot to it. And it's kind of that classic way for anybody who's done their kind of like standard grades of like physical education at school. You think, oh, it's still going to be pretty easy, and then you get there and you're like, wow, there's actually so much I didn't know about the body and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. They'll have sort of maybe an area of interest, whether it's sport or if it's language or something like that, and then it sort of will go down a route that way, dabble in it, see what it's like, and if my passion interest is still there, then just go full for it. What was your so you did your degree at the UWS or University of West of Scotland? How did you find those years and a bit of time at college before? How did you find it? Did you really enjoy that time of studying and learning about different parts with a certain sort of sectors or areas of sports science that you absolutely loved, or areas where you just sort of found it hard to engage with?
Good question. I really enjoyed my college years. They were like some of my favourite. Had nothing really to. Again, it was maybe outside of the work, but I kind of knew in the back of my head that I wanted to go to college because I spoke to a couple of people around me and they said, look, when you go to university, you're a very good character. I'm sure you're going to make an impact, but it is going to be you and one lecturer, but also there's like 100 other students. So it's very hard to get that sort of interactive learning. You can ask questions, and every university lecture I've ever came by has always been like really good help. There is that bit of, if you're struggling at something, they're not hugely going to remember it the next week. You've always kind of got to bring yourself back up. When you're in college, it's you and maybe 13 other people and about maybe not just one, sometimes two lectures, and you're always been able to kind of concentrate with each other and get a bit more of an interpersonal link. And if you're ever struggling with something, they don't really forget either. So my years at college were fantastic for that kind of close relationship that you're building with the lectures, but also the kind of students you were with together. Because another thing as well, you do different modules with different courses at university. At college, it's just you and the people you're with. So you're with them in class, you're with them at lunch, you're with them afterwards. And that was like a really, really good period of time. I was actually a COVID student in my first year at university, so it's hard to say how I can relate to these university experience other than the people that kind of went through it, but it was certainly challenging. One of the things that you quickly learn about sports science, like given all the theory and all the background, and you could know absolutely everything, being able to actually practically apply it is totally, totally, totally different. And those opportunities were kind of ripped away from us a wee bit, just
Yeah.
with the circumstances we're in. So we were doing our measurements in sports science classes, and you were watching lecturers kind of carry this out, but you couldn't touch the gas analysis machine. You were just kind of there, and it was tricky. Don't get me wrong, because as I've said, like I'm somebody who's hugely active and wants to get hands on. So it was a challenging time to learn, but it sort of taught me a discipline that I never really got grasp of at school. That's what I mean. I could get away from it at school, like you'd be able to use your energy up somehow. But when I was in university and you're in your third year and everything matters, you do have to sit down. And don't get me wrong, it was probably even more challenging fourth year, to be honest. But you've just got to sit there and try to take in as much knowledge. And to be fair, with a lot of the lectures, I think sorry, not lectures, is you could actually pause and rewind it anyway. So it was almost like just watching a YouTube video. So anything you didn't get, you actually had that benefit of being able to go back and watch it and hear it again. And that massively helped. But it was definitely challenging. There's a lot of times when you're watching something online, you're thinking, I could really do with trying to understand that better, but the only way you could do it sometimes was with actually being there. And their credit, they with absolutely everything that we had at UWS that we missed out on in our fourth year when things started to kind of open up a little bit, we were actually able to go into the labs and carry some of it out as well. So it wasn't like we were totally shortchanged. We just missed that ability to apply it the minute we kind of learned it. So we're going back in there and having to carry it back out. In fourth year, we definitely got a bit of a mixture again. So our lectures were online. Sorry, our lectures were online, but our practical courses, like our lab stuff, was on campus, which was, in fact, probably the perfect blend for someone like myself. You definitely would say one of my biggest weaknesses was when I'm listening to someone speak. It's sometimes I don't always can understand it the first time, especially when I'm trying to really learn it. So being able to keep that video, rewind it, listen, get in what you needed was fantastic. And then we were able to finally go on to campus and use all the technology we had. So we had the timing gates, the force plates. We were able to get our hands at all when it was all done at the Emirates Arena. Up in Glasgow, London Road. So it was great. We were walking in there, getting to use this massive complex with great equipment. So we got some good opportunities in that sense. In terms of what I really enjoyed subject wise, I don't think there was really one in particular. So I think I always knew in the back of my head, as long as I knew it, I would really enjoy just carrying it out. Because as I say, the knowledge is great, but I think one of the harshest lessons I learned, because I was in third year when I was already working with Ayr United, was like the knowledge is fine, but actually going on somewhere in a football pitch and applying it is really, really difficult. So I don't think there was really one in particular that kind of stuck out. I did enjoy the physiology though, in the sense that that was sort of like the building blocks that if you're going to understand why you're using certain systems, that's where you learn it. And that sort of helps you kind of get a bit of a background and even like kind of your nutrition and your biomechanics helps like kind of stitch everything up. So I really enjoyed the physiology part of it. But actually, biomechanics was quite fun as well. But I think I appreciated that more when I started playing a bit of golf, because then you start to
Yeah.
realise how to be able to apply a bit of force. But yeah, I'd probably say physiology and biology were like my two kind of favourites.
Yeah. Good stuff. Thank you for that. And so one of the areas I was going to ask you about is those challenges that you faced on that pathway, and I guess that change from a close relationship with a college lecturer to suddenly online learning from a distance with people you've never met before. That jump is quite significant, but those 2 years give you good skills of sort of self discipline, self study that I know the ability. I had a bit of university during sort of, I guess you call it COVID, that ability to self-study and discipline yourself to be able to sit down and listen to a lecture in your own time are skills that are really key. And I think moving forward as well in sort of a society we're living in, where this blended approach of working at home and in person, that skill is really important. So it's good to hear that, and sort of eventually getting to do your more in person opportunities as well at the Emirates sounds brilliant. Just on sort of the challenges you talk about taking the theory and the theoretical underpinnings and understandings and putting that into practice. Why is that so difficult to do? Is it because your physical situation can be so wildly different, or is it because you maybe have different resources, or the players and people you're trying to sort of practice this on don't understand what you're doing? So why is that such a challenge?
Do you know what? Everything you said right there is one of many facets about why it's hard to apply the knowledge, and you're absolutely correct in a lot of them. People's understanding of why you're doing it, people's belief of it's going to help them is a massive one as well. Football is not, it's not easy to get someone in football to do something that sometimes does include a football. The biggest contrast, I'd spent a little bit of time working with Ayr Rugby Club as well, and I don't know if maybe because the ball's physically in your hand, but it's far easier to get a rugby player to do basic running than it is to do a footballer. And I think it's maybe just got to do with the fact that you can just stick a ball in somebody's hand anyway and they can do it with it. I can't quite stitch up. I think there's just that mental little thing where a football's in between somebody's feet. So you just can't quite, for certain variables, always apply it. But um, like being able to apply your stuff is, it kind of comes across a lot of those things, like as you said about the education towards the person that you're coaching, that buy-in, and then also as I'm saying, like football's quite a complicated structure in terms of how you're going to coach physical capacity. So being able to understand, there's a lot out there now about how you use spaces and how you can get different physical adaptations from from small little sided games to big long games where you put people on the park, for example. Sometimes if you put what you call the end men, so people at each then the goals, you actually get people having to really sprint and run into the box, and this is creating like higher speed running, which in smaller spaces you just can't apply. So being able to understand like how you can just play football and change the spaces and the objectives to be able to apply that's important. But also, actually, one of the biggest feats as well is I think I was lucky because I started coaching at the age of 14 that I never really had to pick anything this up. And in fact, it's surprising to me now, even when we bring placement students in that haven't done much coaching, is benefit how beneficial that was for me, knowing that I've coached before. Now, it didn't have to be football, it was maybe rugby as well. I did coach football, but I think the coaching aspect was massive because when you get someone in, being able to create that intensity with how you speak and how you carry things out is massive in football. So if you want high intensity, you've got to speak with high intensity. If you're wanting something in the warm up to be done slow, you need to verbalise it. So it's mad. You could probably not even say certain words. Just the way you carry yourself in that moment helps create that atmosphere that you want. So that's a massive part of how it kind of apply even any physical aspect you're trying to get. One of the biggest challenges you sometimes get around Scottish football can be facilities, but again, I think you just learn how to work with what you've got anyway. I think I've always been someone who kind of looks to use as less things and as much of it as possible than try like grasping too many different types of tech or equipment that I can grab on to make my sessions as complicated as possible. Because I've had it just becomes a bit of a headache trying to organise all. I think the best coaches can use 3 cones for like 15 different exercises rather than like particularly use like 15 codes for 3 exercises. I think there's always like a key aspect being able to understand that, and just getting a bit creative is always massively helpful. When I first went in, I did have that sort of thing like, right, okay, maybe guys want to do like want to get faster, so you're just kind of concentrating stuff around getting faster. Like, oh well, if I create like relay races, we're still doing this. We're maybe working with 11, 12-year-olds, so being able to create that competitive environment is now pushing them on further. So being able to apply that as well is important, where you can find that competitive environment to be able to, it's easy enough to turn around and be like, right, George, sprint. But then being able to turn around and be like, right, now, George, you're competing against this guy. Even though I've told you it's not competitive, we both know inside of someone's head, the minute you line up 2 people to do something at the same time, they are going to want to beat that person across from them. It's just nature. So being able to apply those sort of like disguised intensities as well is quite key. I definitely think that going into a sports science background, being able to coach is that's the biggest factor that I found. And I don't think this was just within football, even the time that I worked within rugby. Being able to actually sit down and coach is vital, because that's how you get any of your messages across anyway. So that includes like being able to talk to people and create sessions and get creative and adapt them. That bit's massive, because then that helps you apply everything that you've learned onto the field, and that's the most important part.
Excellent. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear, and I guess from your own experiences, you're able to put that across and show how important those sort of transferable skills from a coach to a sports scientist are. So, yeah, it's really fascinating to hear, and I've got a few questions just sort of off the back of that. Obviously, you've spoken about sort of the work you've done mainly in football, but also in rugby. Have you found that spending time in different sports, and maybe it's not just even working or being physical of them, but sort of watching or learning about different sports, have you found that that's been able to give you more skills or a better understanding of how to improve what you're doing in your specific area?
Yeah, I think as well, it maybe like opens up your niche. I've worked with a lot of people who had this idea that we're always going to be working within their sport. So, say football or whatever, and they've went in Sport Scotland and they've seen a lacrosse opportunity pop up and they've taken it, and they're like, "This is so good." And it's so interesting and it's so well developed and intriguing to them that they're actually been roped in by something. I think like I've kind of like evaded from your question there a little bit, but I think being able to understand anything's important, but also can apply back to what you're doing right now. So one of the biggest things that I learned from working at a rugby club is just how close the first team are to the second team and the thirds and the under 18s, like the award ceremonies and sometimes at training, everybody's like quite close by. And I think that's always helped create that opportunity where if somebody's moving up, they don't really feel like they're that far away from it, but they also feel comfortable enough that they know those people. Because I was playing with under 18s, and this is when I played rugby, sorry, and I played under 18s at Ayr Rugby Club. And you're having your award ceremonies with the first team players and the seconds, and we already knew each other's names, and that stuff makes it like so far easier. So when I started working with Ayr Rugby Club, taking their strength and condition for a wee while, well, it was the academy boys. It was so easy because I already knew Climo, the coach, from the time he was playing, and I was up there as well. You know what I'm saying? So you felt like really close connected. The thing sometimes in football, particularly, is sometimes things are quite exclusive, and they're definitely further apart now. Whether it's a good or bad thing, I couldn't really like grasp on it because especially at Ayr United Football Academy, still have lots of players that go up, and once they're up there, they're treated fantastically. Do you know what I mean? There's not particularly that much of a difference once they're up there, but you definitely notice those culture changes that are massive. I guess being able to adjust and adapt to them sort of just comes from speaking to different people as well, because like even within the culture of football, you're going to deal with some people that are more quiet and some people that are louder, coaches that are more open to what you're trying to put in front of them, whereas opposed to maybe you're working with coaches that are more closed to the things that you're working with them as well. So some coaches particularly, you'll still get some coaches that don't really understand maybe why we use the sciences of sport to benefit people. So I think it's like a lot of running, but sometimes, you know, especially younger coaches or the players who are younger and they've maybe got a coach that isn't particularly buying into it, you're like, well, it's not always about running sometimes, but just make sure that they're moving well, or you're pointing people out. He's growing, and that's maybe the reason he's not playing so well. He's a bit discoordinated, so let's do things where we can help him. So you definitely notice a difference, even within one sport. You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be the kind of grabs from every different sport. I've never really worked in athletics, but the people that I've worked with as well, they are very, very almost like, especially in the sports science realm, because everybody's got so much information when they run now in their watch or whatever that they're using. It's like Formula One engineers. Do you know what I mean? They can control their intensity and paces to like a minimum and a maximum, like that you can't do in team sports as well. So that's where not just your ability to connect with people, but also like your knowledge is really important in that sense, because there's such an emphasis on actually being able to control and periodise that, because it's a bit easier. Does that make sense? You can't, even though you create a football game, you can't particularly always control to the point of everyone running. But you might be able to pull people out, but right, okay, now someone's done too much, we'll pull them out. But you might not get everyone up to the pace that you want them, just because of the way it is. You maybe have to do top ups and that later. Whereas like running, you take that one person out, controlling their pace throughout it. So you definitely learn about these things within your way, but there's like loads of differences even within each and every sport or each and every person you deal with, that being able to be an open book yourself and quite not shut off to maybe people who particularly don't understand what it is that you're doing yet is also crucial, and being able to kind of give them that opportunity to be like, okay, they don't understand, right, now it's my job to set something up, it goes well, and be like, look, that's why we do it, if that makes sense as well. So the complications aren't just within different sports, but sometimes within the same sport.
Yeah, you've made some really good points there. I think the culture point, as you're sort of saying, is something that can be noticed quite easily, and if you're having those different experiences across, as you say, different environments within the same sport, or even across different sports, those culture differences can be really strong, and it might be the difference between you coming in with the ideas and this work you want to carry out, and whether it's sort of accepted and taken on board straight away, or people are a bit reserved and a bit hesitant with it. So yeah, I think the culture thing is so interesting, and can be a big part between having success in what you're doing straight away, or it taking a bit longer.
Well, you've now obviously been playing rugby for, you know, the majority of your life. What's the differences you've noticed between when you're playing younger and when you're playing now? I'm sure you've got some even been involved, you know, just throughout the years.
Yeah, it's like for me, the enjoyment or desire to be involved with a team, like whether it's from coaching or playing, is if you want to go down and want to go get involved, is how you feel in that environment. It's not often to do with
how good the team is, what level you're playing at, how if you're winning or losing or not. Often that can maybe have a knock-on impacts, but it's the people that are there. It's, do you feel part of this culture? Do you feel supported? Do you enjoy being in that environment? And then that gives you the freedom to try things, to practice things, to be yourself, and it makes it so much easier to be a part of that. So I think that's such an important part of the culture there. We were also chatting about sort of different sports as well, and cycling's like a big one where, like athletics, you can have sort of your power meter, your computer, and show exactly, have all the numbers, have all the statistics of your performance. Whereas you say in football or in rugby, it's a bit more about interpreting what statistics you've got, and it's not a case of, right, this player needs to run a bit less or do this a bit different. You've got to sort of use your experience, use your knowledge, and how to get the best out of performance, rather than just saying, right, there's the numbers, stop this, do that. As well, you look at in sports science, taking those ideas from different sports. So recently this year, rugby at the elite level has introduced the mouth guards to try and help detect high level impacts to the head, and hopefully aid in detecting concussions. And a lot of that was based off of what's happening in other contact sports. So in American football, not everyone wears a mouth guard, it's less normal. And they were thinking about, or they've put detectors in helmets, but your helmet moves a lot more than a mouth guard stuck to your teeth. So it's how can we adapt and learn from science in other sports, and put that into our sport. So I find that interesting in a way, and it's important to have that open mind when you're putting into practice what you're doing. Just sort of lastly on your, I guess, pathway to becoming a sports scientist, was there any other sort of mediums or ways that you were able to sort of learn about what you were doing, that you were sort of developed your passion, whether it was through material online or speaking with people?
I'll be honest with you, George. I'm less of a theory type of person anyway. You've probably kind of gathered that. A lot of my main skills I've always kind of looked to buy into, even when we were working at summer school together, was just being able to get people on board and work with you. So I've always tried to spend time shadowing people that will give me the opportunity, or any kind of opportunity came by. When I was at UWS, we had a massive opportunity to go down to Leicester City Football Club, and really, really implemental at like the early stages before I did too much as well, in terms of letting me know about what the other side looks like. So they're like elite. They've got like the most world class technology that they could use. They had GPS monitors that were able to register like how much weight you shift and how much of it's onto like either side. So they were trying to use that to see if you could predict some sort of like hamstring injury, like if people are maybe leaning too much to one side. So they've got like the abundance of technology to gather any sort of data you could possibly get. But even in that short time that I was there, sometimes like their reality is like totally different to what you've lived as well. So we actually went down and did a trains course for, this was more for the sports coaching guys. This was like an actual technical type of little drill that we did with one of our coaches down there. And we went back up to Leicester training ground, and one of the sports science guys, I think he was maybe the intern we're speaking to, oh, we're just down at your previous training ground. He was like, it's not that great, is it? And you're like, seems like genuinely like football clubs up this way would bite their hand off to have the facilities they had there. I mean, like, there was maybe like 3, 4 11-a-side pitches. They still had a gym. They still had everything that, to me, coming from it, learned a little bit from other people, just particularly about like how these like pass a little bit different, and how you can only work with the opportunity you've got. But it's a small little lessons that they teach as well. So they would just explain to me when I was asking maybe after, I was like, look, we don't have that technology, but we've got this. Like, how do you, what is it we could do? And he was like, well, he would explain, you're also still quite new to it, so why not just give yourself maybe 3, 4 KPIs that you want to see, and then nothing else, because it saves you kind of try to scramble your brain for answers. So I would concentrate on things like total distance, high speed running, top speeds, accels and decels, things that gave me a bit of like volume and a bit of intensity to concentrate on, and then that just kind of helped me gather my thoughts and understand what I was working with, and also give people a profile that I could hand players back. I think being able to take shadow opportunities is huge. So that's what I'm saying earlier on. When I was kind of established within Ayr United Football Academy, Thomas Donovan, the head of performance in the academy, has also been working with the first team. And I'd always been saying, look, I'd be quite happy to go down and see what he was doing. And the door was always open to me. But there was one time when we got to do the physical testing with them, with the first team. And when I was there, my eyes were so open to not just the testing that we did, because I've done that 100 times over, and it's kind of the same with any play that you carry out, but the different intensity and the way you talk to people and the way you treat people are just so much more strict and more regimented, and the way you move from one exercise to others far more constructed and controlled, and be able to learn how, like, when you move up the levels, you will have to also be more, I don't know if like professional is the right word, but also be more structured in terms of like everything, because when we're working at Dundee 18s, everything's still structured, but I only keep the rest time for the time they're getting a drink, not particularly time that maybe like we're moving from one exercise to the other. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe that rest is maybe like 4 or 5 minutes. Is it a good one? I'd say so, but down at the first team, they've got that down to a T. So be able to learn those kind of differences. In terms of materials, I just kind of took what I got from university. Again, I've only been involved in this maybe like this is my third season. So I've got a football sports science book in the house that Tony Strudwick wrote, and I read parts of it, especially when it comes to prehab and rehab, and it's a great book to have. But even when I get set through so much of that knowledge, it's about, right, do I need it yet? Like, am I actually using it in my role? Because that's what I'm saying. I still work with Thomas Donovan, the head of performance. There's certain different jobs that we both take on, and we've got physios as well. So I think in terms of learning, I think it's always crucial to get yourself out and spending time and shadowing people, because the things that I did read this in a book actually. People will tell you one thing about what's really good to do, but there's a good chance that they actually don't do it themselves. And it's like this thing about, like, you can't really coach yourself because you're always going to have your own biases, whether you believe it or not. But when you actually go out and watch them, it's amazing at how quickly you realise, like, they never actually told me they did that. Or something happens that you've never seen before, and you're like, I've never seen that happen before. Why did you do that? And they tell you, and you're like, now you'll spot it 100 times in your training session, and you're like, never even noticed folk did that.
Yeah. I think you make a really good point, and often it can be you learn all this information to pass your exam, to pass your coursework, and then it sort of disappears as soon as you've done that. But if you sort of take that, what do I need to learn right now, or even starting to sort of get the balls rolling in that practical sense, start learning about things, and then it's like, right, I need to take the next step. So it's going to be, a week of sort of a bit of book work, reading up about things, learning about things, so that I can sort of relate to the practice I'm putting it in.
I've kind of thought about something. Obviously, you've been learning Spanish throughout your course, haven't you?
Yeah.
And you're now in Spain. Like, how have you found the difference between learning it in university to actually being in Spain and applying it? I'm imagining, is it similar in that sense for you, or is it a big difference? Or?
I think it's such a good comparison you make, because I've sort of was learning Spanish since I was quite young, and always sort of had a passion for it and enjoyed learning languages. Did a bit of French as well, and those first couple of years of university, I was like, I'm not actually too bothered of sort of getting the really good grades on exams or passing everything. I'm like, I just want to prepare myself, and then when I go abroad, I know I can just go sort of full at it, and that's when the big learning will happen, and that's sort of come true. When you're surrounded by it every day and almost put in that position of forced, it's sort of your mindset changes from I'm going to do a bit of Spanish to it's just sort of constantly in that mindset. So yeah, I guess when you put that in the context of sport and doing a placement and shadowing someone, when you're in that environment and you're sort of forced to be involved in it, your mind's just fully focused on that.
It's passive though. It's passive. It's not particularly.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good way of putting it.
it's passive. It's not like you're particularly trying to. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but obviously we know that I was born in Spain, but I spent 11 years where I wasn't back, and I did forget quite a substantial amount of Spanish because I was so young when I learned it. I was so young when I forgot it as well. But when I started going back at 18, like sitting there, and I remember this TV was on in Spanish. I couldn't really understand it, right? But there'd be times I'd be doing something else. I'd be like, I heard that word on the TV, and then I would ask somebody what, what does that mean? And they would tell you, and you wouldn't forget because in that little moment, you've just happened to just without you trying to, you've just clicked in a little moment. And as you say, you're sitting there just listening to it every day, and whether you're aware of it or not, it's how we learned when we were younger. Do you know what I mean? You just absorb this information and being out there and just absorbing all that information that you really don't know that you're taking in. And sometimes it's just like flying you by and you don't know that you've took it in because there'll be a time where I reckon you'll meet someone and they'll be like, wow, George, your Spanish is like crazy good, and you might not particularly have the gauge of whether it is or not, but it's because of just being immersed in that situation, being able to pick it all up. If I was just doing my degree while I was at university without being in a field where I was coaching, I reckon I would find it much harder as well to apply what I've learnt, but also have that ability to hear it twice, as we're talking about, being able to take in that knowledge passively, because I think that's so crucial in being able to kind of pick anything up, like immerse yourself in that situation, because even now I'm still learning little bits in Duolingo in Spanish, but until I'm over there, I honestly can't really tell you it works. I don't know if I wouldn't say it doesn't. I certainly still think it does something, but it's totally different being able to sit there and immerse all that knowledge in.
As you said, Miguel, you're working with Ayr United Football Club in that role. Could you talk to me a bit about sort of how a week looks in that position and what it involves?
My main days while I'm working are a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Friday, a Saturday, and a Sunday. So that's just within my role at United. Now, big thing to consider for everyone is that different football clubs will be run a bit differently, whether it's like within structure or how they kind of like carry out the roles. But at A United, my week will probably start by taking the under 18s on a Tuesday night. So our role on a Tuesday night is to get as much fitness aspect in as we can, because at under 18 level, we are obviously quite short in terms of like full time players, but we'll play against a lot of football clubs that have maybe like 5 or 6 full time players in the squad. So we try to use that time really wisely to get as much fitness in as we can, and this is where I learned the big learning point. Sorry, was probably about just how important it is to be able to level with the players and not just get them on side, but let them understand that you genuinely want the best for them. Like, you are not in this role because you like I'm not on my LinkedIn and posting their stats about how much they've improved throughout the season, or I'm not out here showing it off to coaches about what we've done physically compared to maybe other teams, or how many goals we scored in the last couple of minutes because we're still fit. To me, that's not important. My biggest objective is just make sure the boys are fit and the boys understand why we're doing it, and then the rest sort of just it falls in place. So on a Tuesday night, they can be quite hard going. So on weeks where we don't particularly have a lot of players that have maybe played reserve games, we'll try our best to get as much fitness in as we can as a group that day. So that might include some kind of like physical conditioning, some kind of hit running. I really like using 2 versus 1. So that's when you've got 2 attackers, 1 defender, and the way we kind of like chop and change that will just depend. But essentially in these situations, you create good counter-attack movements where people are running back and forth quite a lot. Ideally at the beginning, obviously, of like every training session, I'll be the person who takes the warm-ups and make sure the players are warmed up. As I said, like being able to carry it out, but also being able to characterise what I want from them. So like depending how high intense we want certain bits of the session to be, I sometimes include some kind of like passing or some kind of like shooting drill or whatever, just to get the legs moving as well and make sure we're getting plenty of contact time with the football in as well. During that physical conditioning session, again, it just depends on the numbers that we've got or what they've had on that week. So sometimes if like we've got we're kind of getting through a situation right now at United where we've got a lot of players maybe moving towards first team or a lot of reserve games on a Tuesday. So they're actually quite well equipped for playing on a Friday and whatnot because they're getting kept fit. When a Tuesday right now we're starting to kind of like concentrate on boys who aren't particularly doing a lot of game time outside of the under 18s to try to keep them up to speed with the games that are going to play in because they're just as important as anyone else because they've also going to have such a big part to play in the season. So being able to adapt our sessions to be able to make sure that these guys are still as fit as others is something that we found really important coming into this back end of the season. So again, that might be within running and certain boys going off and doing like a bit of kind of recovery if they've been away, like the reserve games or whatever. On a Wednesday, it's more kind of based around shape and tactics and whatnot. So the coaches just more or less take that, and I'll maybe take the warm up. Later on in the evening, I'm down with the under 11s to under 16s. So in that time, a lot of time with the under 11 and under 12s, we're concentrating on just introducing different types of works. So at the beginning of the season, I set out between each quarter what weeks we work on certain things. So some weeks we're working on movement, some weeks we're working on sprinting, some weeks we're working on power. And again, that's just like introductory kind of level stuff where we're just showing them what it is they do, how they can move better, and also education from like a younger point. It's like when you're doing things like power, it's not just a case of jump. You really need to use those jumps to go at one time and do it really explosively to maximise your potential of getting what you're trying to get out of that. Be powerful. So being able to introduce that as well to young players, so they don't just think, right, I just need to jump. With the older boys, they're probably a wee bit more familiarised with why we're there, so they will have kind of similar sessions to maybe the under 18s. We might have certain conditioning sessions, or might have, depending on certain situations, if the squad's maybe struggling in some kind of aspect, we'll concentrate on it as well, so the whole squad might do it. And then we've also maybe got a couple outliers within like testing data that we just kind of concentrate on, and maybe myself or a couple of placement students just work with and make sure we can work towards what they're needing, whether that's to be faster, whether they might be struggling with their body movement, because that's a massive one at under 11, under 12s. There's at least one in every single age group that we've had to maybe work with for a continued period of time to make sure that they can move a bit better. And that's one of the more challenging ones that I've ever came across, but also one of the most rewarding, because when you see them suddenly just step up and they're moving better, you're like, it's like a it's a visible difference you can see. So that one's got a lot of reward in it. And with older ones, again, even when we're going on to like under 14s to 16s, works conditioning sessions, or a lot of time, still at this age group, we do use like small-sided possession games or bigger possession games to make sure we're still getting the same adaptations, but we're keeping them as much contact time as the ball, because like those age groups, it's harder to take them away. They're still learning a lot of the game. Yeah, I mean, you never stop learning, but at those age groups, it's quite important. And then on a Friday's match day with the under 18s, so depending if it's an afternoon or an evening, I'll be there, essentially take the warm up, look after the subs, make sure they're fit enough to come on, record the game time of every player that's playing, collect the GPS data at the end of the game and stick it on a spreadsheet. I've never had to, but sometimes maybe helping the physio if there's ever been like any kind of major injury, but touch wood, we've never had that. Communicate to coaches sometimes, like maybe if players don't particularly look like they're moving too well, and then try to get the information, because we're about to play a game, so it's key that we've got the best players on. So if maybe, we think a couple of subs are maybe just not quite moving the same way they normally do, like that's where you start learning the small things, but being able to like see what you're working with. It's going up and putting your shoulder in and your arm around them and but like, are you all right? And sometimes those situations say yeah, sometimes those situations will say no. Small little kind of details of that. And then I usually deal with the players at kind of half time as well, the subs, so keep them out and make sure that we get some kind of work base that we can concentrate on. So like maybe getting some passing or some crossing done, just whatever players kind of want to do, because it's hard to come onto the pitch when you've not really kicked the ball in a while. And then on a Saturday, working within Ayr United Football Club, I'll cover like emergency first aid at home games. So when our younger teams play at home, it'll be me that'll be in charge of kind of covering any injury or first aid that happens on the games as well. And then on a Sunday, we're in with under 18s doing a gym session. So again, the head of performance can organise a lot of that, but sometimes I'm in the gym, depending on what boys have done for the week, prescribing a different session, so I'll sometimes follow me. And yeah, that's a good session for just letting the boys work, make sure the boys are working, but also it's a great time for, again, those little small anecdotes of getting to know them, getting to know how their week's gone, make sure they feel comfortable, ask them how they feel the game went. Just make sure they understand that all the coaches are always there for them, but I sort of myself make sure that they understand that I can be their first point of contact if they get any concerns. So like a lot of times maybe boys will come up to me and say, oh, Miguel, like, my legs are actually really sore, and I'll be able to be like, look, okay, we'll work towards something that we can do. So that time's really key as well, being able to build those kind of relationships. And also the coaches are there, and obviously a lot of their work gets done during the week, so at that time on a Sunday we're able to just talk to them and get an idea of what we all want for the week as well, and being able to kind of spend a bit of time talking outside of group chats as well for that period. So yeah, it's a part-time job, but I'm on 5 days a week. It's only maybe like 2 or 3 hours here or there, but it's alongside that, like especially over like a the Wednesday night, sorry, there'll be a bit of like planning involved during the day as well to make sure that you've got your sessions kind of sorted. I tend to do them all on Monday, just so they're all kind of done in one, but some people might want to do them before. So that's how a kind of week looks like.
Very good. Yeah, and I think I like the point you make about sort of just having that time with players, and even if it's not so much doing sort of an intense session, if you're just there and being able to talk to them, build those relationships, I think that's really key, and especially a young player's development. As you said, it's only a part-time role, and the hours are in a sort of normal world outside of a sporting world are quite antisocial. So how have you found that, and what are the challenges with that?
It's kind of changed as I've got older, to be honest. When I was younger and I first started this venture, it's all you ever kind of want to do, and you don't really care about the rest that comes with it. Because I've only been wanting to do this for like since I was like 19. I stopped playing football. It was like the one thing that I thought, right, I am going to give this like a full solid bash. You sort of just work around it as well. Maybe I'm kind of unique in like my circle, but me and my friends are sort of the people who we don't really see a lot of each other anymore, but there's always like big events and stuff that we've organised like to make sure we see each other, whether it's gigs or people's birthdays or just kind of general get-togethers and stuff. So like, we've always got stuff that's kind of planned, and especially within my circle, like us being friends is really important in life. So being able to kind of handle that is quite key. I think you just learn to go with it. I've I know I've made this bed, so I've got to sleep in it. And it's easy when you're enjoying it, to be honest. Being on there, even outside of like my close friends, like I've been very lucky in being able to connect those relationships with coaches as well, where a lot of them are now friends as well, you know. It, I'll go out and play golf with them, or there might be social events on with coaches as well that we go to. So like even though we're all kind of busy working, we make sure to have that kind of time where we're all together, and we're talking not just about football without football, because sometimes that can be draining if it's every single day. The biggest thing that I would say about football is like very emotionally taxing, but but that's just because like if you care a lot, it takes a lot out of you. Do you know what I mean? I'm not just particularly bothered about what I do, but being able to go a weekend and get a win with the players and the coaches is still like massive to me. Do you know what I mean? That bit's never really changed. So even though particularly that I'm not playing, like I'm pacing up and down in the touchline, making sure that I'm keep moving, because I generally want to see the boys win. You know what I'm saying? It's probably harder on the sideline to not be involved with that. So being able to kind of carry out in that sense is massive. Being able to kind of, I guess, make sure you're running your battery well as well within you, and how much you can deal with is important. It's just football, and everybody goes through the same. It doesn't really matter too much. It's just about asking yourself whether you want to do it or not. I think that's kind of the key part as well. But you'll only learn that once you're out there.
So obviously you've been working in football for a wee bit now, but you're looking at moving on to a role outside of football as well, where you're sort of transferring these skills that you've learnt and built up. Would you be able to talk a wee bit about this role and what you're able to take over from your experience in football?
Yeah, no, it's fine. So, it's funny talking about obviously everything that you kind of deal with working in football, and I think in the past few months since I've been back doing my masters at Edinburgh University and everything that's kind of came within working football, I just don't feel like it's the right time for me anymore. As I said, it's very emotionally draining. It's what hours, and it's unbelievable opportunities that I hope that one day I come back to, that when I'm recharged, I'm refreshed. But football definitely does take a lot out of you. Um, so I wanted to make sure it was a considered decision, that I was ready to move on from football, because it's not just been like my life, like since I've been doing sports science. It's been pretty much all my life since I was maybe like 13 when I first started playing. It's been important to me. So been able to understand a little bit about what skills I've got that have maybe made me a really strong sports scientist has definitely been my relationship building and my understanding of getting to know folk and being good at listening and taking on what people want, being able to understand how to give them what they want, been a huge factor in that. So I was sort of looking at different skills. I was looking about the internet, and things within business and sales seemed to kind of fit my profile quite well, that I could apply skills, learn something new, which I think was really important. If I'm going to do something here, I want it to be quite new to me, and also gives me an opportunity to work a more kind of regular life. So this job will be Monday to Friday, 2 whole days off that are together, and I'm able to kind of go out and do what I want and just have a bit more kind of free time that's actually connected. Because anyone who's worked will know, especially in like shift patterns, if you've got a day off in itself, it almost feels like you're just kind of getting ready for the day that you're working again. It can be quite tricky. So I'll be working with a business team up in Glasgow, Johnson Controls. So I'll be working with their security side. So I'll be involved in the kind of sales part of their department, and I'll be travelling around Scotland hopefully in the future, and I'll be securing kind of contracts and helping people out to make sure that we're putting the services out as well as we can and giving people what they want, and also being that kind of medium in terms of like what they want, and I'll make sure to give them it. So it's good because, again, as I said, it's the same kind of learning skills where you're talking to people, you're taking on the messages that they're giving you, you're applying it, and you're looking for a solution, and you're carrying out in your own time. So I'm excited to get started and do something that is, as I said, similar but sort of different, and seeing where it can kind of take me. As I said, I want it to be something brand new, so there's a bit of unknown here. I don't hugely know what I'm doing, but the good thing is it's a trainee job as well, so I'll be doing plenty of training throughout my time while I'm working with the company, and I'll be applying it as I go, and again, just taking on as much information as I can. Yeah, so it's just a bit of a fresh slate for a wee bit of time to get myself away from football, but I certainly don't think it'll be the last time I'm working within football by a long stretch. No.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, and I think you've put across some really good points where those skills that you've learned and built up through sport put you in such a good place to be able to try something new. And I think it's very brave to really take a big step out of your comfort zone and push yourself in that regard and see where it goes. And yeah, by all means, you're still very young, so those opportunities to get back involved in football once maybe that opportunity, that right opportunity comes up are going to be there. Look, Miguel, we've covered a huge amount today, from your sort of whole pathway into sports science and the opportunities you got with that at a young age, and then your role with Ayr United and what all that includes, and what the reality really is working in football, and then of course finishing off a bit about your golf, which is great to hear. So just to finish up, I've got a question which is sort of, what advice would you give to a young person or young people interested in sports science and maybe working in football? What would be your sort of one piece of advice for someone looking to go into that space?
I would probably tell them the only way you're really going to know whether it's for you is just being all in. It's not. There's definitely ways that you can work within football kind of realms and do sports science that do include kind of being part time, but not at like high levels. You know, like it takes a lot of your time because it's also planning and preparation and organisation. There's a lot that goes into it, but definitely try it. I would never, even my story to now, it's definitely walking away from football for a little while, but it is not by no means probably the end. I couldn't imagine. So I think once I've maybe got a better idea of what it's just more like I've kind of arrived at a certain situation in life where I want a little bit more free time and I just want a bit more lineal kind of things to concentrate on. So a lot of time when you're working, even though part time in certain, because I can guarantee like we're not the only football club at our level that's got part time staff that's in 5 days a week. There's going to have a lot of it. But there's a lot of assets in your life you're trying to organise, usually other work and, as you say, relationships or um, daily things that you need to get done. It can be tricky, but it's just the way it is. And the opportunities are fantastic. There's so much out there that I'm able to say and really proud of doing. Like being able to work with amazing people and amazing athletes are now playing at first team level, and being able to know that I've always got friends that are friends for life within the sport, which is fantastic. It's brought so many good opportunities. But definitely don't be scared to immerse yourself and don't be scared to turn around at the end of it and say, do you know what, it's maybe not for me and it's maybe not for me now. That's not particularly a bad thing. You might find another sport that fits your lifestyle a bit better. You might find other opportunities, like the educational sector. I can see a few of my former classmates from university who now work more within the educational part, so they work within the universities, and that maybe gives them a bit more of a structured lifestyle. There's definitely lots of avenues within even sports science that you can particularly go in that aren't just football and you might enjoy, but certainly don't be scared. And if you're in the realms of sports science, I think definitely being able to go out there and learn the soft skills of how you're going to work with people is massive, because it's going to be the thing that probably separates you from a lot of people coming out of university. And this coming from someone who's actually had to interview people for my current role. So I want to make sure that the boys that were getting someone in from the under 18s were going to get someone that was good, because I genuinely really care about the boys, and I thought I want to make sure that I'm involved in the interview process so I can see. And a lot of the time, it's one of these things where you're sitting here in a conversation with them, George, and you're kind of like, I'm not really left with any major takeaways from them. Like, I feel like they've not really asserted their. And it's sometimes hard to do as well. People are nervous, don't get me wrong, but it's just about having that attitude to walk in a room and being able to understand that it's challenging. You're going to have a lot of big personalities in you, but if you've done the background, you've coached, you've tried different sports, you've made sure that you've played different sports. That's a massive one as well, actually, that like no one's really touched. You shouldn't really carry anything out until you've done it yourself. So until you've at least been on a football field, until you've been on a tennis court, until you've been in a rugby situation, until you know what these athletes are going through, I wouldn't really think you're going to do too well just based on that fact that you can't relate with them. That understanding, like, I'm going to push you through something that's going to be really tricky. So going out there and making sure you're learning all the the tricks of trades, as they say, and the wee things that you understand is massive. And it's for all the theory you're going to learn, being able to apply it is going to be the thing that'll probably set you apart from a lot of people coming out of university, and getting that experience early on. So once you've got your degree behind you, is also going to be massive. And on that, I probably would also say that your master's degree is probably going to be your next step, but don't hesitate in applying for jobs without it. Because if you're good enough and you know the right people, the good chances is you'll still get those opportunities regardless anyway. So don't be scared to start your application in places that you've maybe not looked as like you're qualified enough, because if you've got those skills to be able to apply them, I'm sure you are.
Excellent. Yeah, some really good points there. A range of different things that people can sort of take on board and put into the context of this. So thank you for that. And thank you for your time today, Miguel. You've given such a brilliant insight into sort of a role you've had, and more about sort of the outside and what actually involves and the goings on behind a role like this, and sort of the difficulties and challenges that can come up with it as well. So yeah, thank you for such a brilliant episode, and thank you for your time as well.
No, thank you, George. It's been insightful. It's good to be a place to be as well, because you're now thinking a lot about a lot of things that have maybe passed you by, you've not really thought of now. So I've learned a lot from this, as well as hopefully other people have been able to take from it, mate. It's been nice, thank you. And catching up with yourself.
Yeah, awesome, good stuff.